first look at corn harvest completion will come in Monday's USDA Crop Progress Report. Before growers begin storing this year's crops, Nebraska Extension entomologist Bob Wright says there are some precautions they can take to help ensure the grain stays in good quality. We talked with Bob earlier this week to learn why producers need to prevent insects from harming their stored products.
Well, there's a couple of different types of insects that can damage stored grain. There's several different types of grain beetles, and there's some caterpillars that also feed on grain. And so there's a variety of different insects that can cause problems if we're not aware of them.
So before harvest, what should growers be doing?
Well, it's really important that you clean out the bins now. Get all the old grain out from both the bins, grain trucks, anything, and the augers, anything you used to move grain last year. Potentially, if it has old grain in it, there could be insects feeding on that. That'll start a new infestation when you add the new grain in.
So you're saying all the grain or most of the grain?
Well, ideally, it's a lot better if you can clean out all the grain and get it all cleaned out. You'll have less insect problems. If for some reason you do need to leave old grain in the bin, it's generally recommended that you fumigate the old grain to kill any insects, and that can be a rather hazardous practice, and most growers probably aren't trained to do that, so you probably want to hire that out to a professional fumigator.
You're talking about if you would leave the bin a quarter or a half full or something like that, if you wouldn't clean it out entirely.
Right.
Are there signs of damage that you can be looking for other than specifically just insects that you might see?
Well, most of these insects will cause some damage to the grain, so there'll be dust. If it's in the case of the caterpillars, there may be webbing on the surface or caked grain from the insect feeding in the past years.
Is it important to differentiate how long you plan to store this grain based off of what treatments or what things you need to do now?
Right. If you're planning on storing for more than a year, you really need to be careful to start off with clean grain because the insects will have a longer time to build up. So definitely even if you're starting with a clean bin, it's often recommended to fumigate before you add new grain if you're planning to store it for a year or longer.
How important ventilation and temperature control?
Yeah, that's the other thing. You want to check your fans as well and make sure they're working before you start adding the grain so you can ventilate and get the temperature down quickly after harvest, and that can help reduce insect problems.
The North Central Integrated Pest Management Center features more resources on preparing bins for harvest. We'll link to that on the Market Journal website.